All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Don, my name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the streets of Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Tom Scherpenzeel accepted our invitation to the show. Tom, welcome to the show, man.
Hello, hello.
Um, in the last 2 years, we've been living in crazy time with the pandemic, the vaccine, and people believe in it. Some people don't believe. Many people were affected. So how you manage? Were you affected? How you holding up with the crazy 2 years?
Um, First of all, I wasn't infected until a couple of months ago,
Yeah,
uh, and that happened during the tour we did, the last tour we did with Kayak,
yeah,
and so we couldn't really finish the tour, which was a pity because we were already in Norway to do the final show. But we couldn't get out of the bus, so the singer was infected. And then, well, if you're with 15 or 16 people in a coach in a bus, well, there's no escape infection. So, well, that was a pity. But before that, we were my wife and I, we were clean and no problems. Just well, the band couldn't play, which is of course a pity, but I'm always a busy guy, so I can always find things to do. And especially the first year, I liked the peace and quiet. The less traffic, less stress for everyone. We went for a walk, and it was fine. But of course, as a musician, you also want to play, and that was impossible.
right. Yeah, if you're on the tour, you don't have money, coming in to pay the bills, and so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
now you can always find a studio work, right? I suppose.
Yeah, well,
So
it costs money too, but it's you have to find solutions, and in some way, when you're forced to find a solution, many people will find a solution. It's just, well, the thing with most musicians is that they want to play, and if they can't and make a living, it's difficult. Yes.
let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family? How old were you when perhaps you began taking piano lesson or guitar lesson? How were you, and how difficult was it at the beginning?
There's a musical tradition in the family of my mother. My mother wasn't a professional musician, but she played violin in amateur orchestras, and the family from my mother were professional musicians. So maybe that's my background in a musical way. And I started having piano lessons at the age of 6. And but I was always very bad with notes, learning the notes and playing the sheet music. I always preferred to improvise and play whatever I liked to play. And so after a couple of years, I lost interest, and I kept interest in music, but not, to learn and study the notes. And then after a couple of years, when I was 14, I started playing. I was asked by someone if could you play the piano or the bass, and I tried, and it worked. And so I took up lessons again, and because now I saw why I would need it, and
Good.
I did a combination of improvising and study, and slowly but surely that developed into other bands and professional study at the conservatory, at the music academy, and where we met other guys that later joined Kayak.
I got you. And then what kind of music were you listening to when you were in the equivalent of high school here in the United States? When you were, I don't know, 15, 16, what type of band were you listening?
My first band was a very amateuristic band. We played everything from the girl from Ipanema to John Mayall. It didn't really matter. It was just sort of exercise for me. But after that, I started playing the bass guitar in a band with Pim Koopman, the later drummer of Kayak, and a guitar player. And we played Jimi Hendrix and Cream and all that sort of stuff. And in the meantime, I listened to all kinds of pop music. I even had my own hit parade, my own charts, and
Really?
I spent more time listening to the radio and doing my own charts than study at school. So and then at a certain point we developed the band Kayak, and I was still I was going to the music academy then, playing piano, but my main instrument was the double bass.
Yeah.
Classical double bass, and for me it was more a method a way to escape my school. So my parents said, well, you can stop school, because I didn't do anything, and they said you can leave school, but you have to find something else to find a direction, to learn a trade. Then I thought, well, I'm playing bass guitar in a band. Why not, study a double bass? Because I also liked classical music. I never intended to become a double bass player, in an orchestra, but it was a way to escape my school. And well, there we met other guys that later joined Kayak, as well as Pim Koopman, who studied there too. And then the band Kayak, we became too busy with all gigs and shows and venues, and so I had to stop the study with double bass. But I still have, I did learn to play the classical stuff, and learned how to arrange for strings. So it was very useful. But I prefer to do my own music.
I get you. And then, when you guys begin the first band, when you were rehearsing and taping, you used like a reel-to-reel tape recording, cassette. What was the medium to record at the beginning?
In the beginning, well, before the band Kayak started, we did all sorts of recordings at the house of Pim Koopman, the drummer. His father had a Sony a 4-track recording. Well, it was sound on sound. Actually, it wasn't 4-track; it was 2-track, and you could dub the sound and add an extra layer. But after 3 recordings, there was a lot of hiss. And but we learned to record things, and Pim's drums were in the living room of his parents' house. So it was a very nice time to start and learn the music and the trade.
Yeah, and then in '72, for what I read, the music in Holland was very vibrant. There were, bands like Focus, Earth and Fire, Exception, many progressive rock. So what was the motivation to form Kayak at the time, early at the beginning? There were many, like Focus and Earth and Fire, many great bands out there. What was the motivation for you guys, young kids, to form?
Well, of course, those bands inspired us too, because we were a couple of years younger than Focus and Earth and Fire, like 4 or 5 years younger. But of course, knowing that they could play that sort of music and do shows in Holland, it inspired us to do it as well. But we didn't want to copy their music. Of course, they have influenced the band. They had a lot of influence on Kayak, but we also listened a lot to other, progressive rock bands, and like Yes and Genesis, of course, they were a big inspiration for us. But to know that in a small country like Holland is, at the time there were like 13 or 14 million people, and that it was possible to make a decent living, that was a good, good to know. And so we were glad to have been given the opportunity to develop ourselves, and we got a record contract with EMI, and we made our first album in '73, and from then on we just continued to grow.
Yeah, in Italy at the time, remember, there were so many Italian bands, all progressive, like Banco and PFM and Premiata. There were a lot of very progressive music, like you say, Genesis and Yes, and many great bands. So for a young kid, it was good to listen to the radio at the time, and get a hold of who is playing. I was able to listen your first for album, the one from 72 to 76, they are remarkable. I mean, they're very, very important. How do you see now in year 2022, if you look back on the stuff, anything you would have changed, or how difficult or easy was the first four album to put it together and tour and record?
Um, in a way, we didn't see how difficult it was. And we learned by doing it and making mistakes and then trying to correct it at the next album. And of course, I mean, if I listen back, I can hear how we developed, how we grew. And the first album was a collection of songs that we've made in the 5 years before that. So we were like a kid in a toy shop, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
We tried to. It was like an explosion of creativity, the first album, but it wasn't really balanced. We just wanted to go in the studio and record and have fun and do what we thought was great. But of course, if you listen back, you hear the mistakes and the producing things that could have been better. But the energy and the enthusiasm is still there, which is very important for those early albums.
Yeah.
And but every album was different for me from the one before. And of course, there's a certain style and a certain direction, but each album is different.
Good. And then were you guys making enough money to survive, to live on your own?
Well,
doing some gigs?
That's one of the things we would have done differently now, because we basically we were like 20, 21 and almost living at home with our parents, so we were supported. But after 2 or 3 years, you have to do it yourself. Of course, you can't stay living at home forever. So, but we had a manager, and in the beginning it was all very nice, but he made a mess of our financial situation. So in the beginning we could live fairly okay from the money we thought we earned. But later on it appeared that he did so many things wrong, and it was a really a bad situation for the band. 5 or 6 years later. So you live and learn. That's also on the financial side. And that's one of the things I maybe would have done differently now. But when you're 19, when you're 20, you don't know anything about the business. You don't know. And if you have a manager who is, he is very enthusiastic, but he makes a mess of the money, it's not until years later that you find out what went wrong. So you trust him, and he does things for you, but he made a mess of it. But at the end we were happy with the way it developed, and we had our chances, and he did a lot of good things as well. He was a very innovative person. He thought of commercial plans for the band, and how to present ourselves, and how to get a contract in America, for instance. And that was the good side. The bad side was we didn't earn. But okay, it's one of those things. Many bands have this problem.
Yeah, it's hard. I hear for many bands, it's hard to trust someone with you're young, with your finances, and how much money are you charging per concert, and how much money is coming in after taxes, and how much money are you putting away for the next gig, and so on.
Well, we were depending on our manager, and he did strange things with our money, but we didn't know. And later on, the tax comes, and the tax man says, "Well, you've earned so much money." I said, "No, we haven't." "Yeah, you did. It's here in the books." Well, that's all. That's the kind of thing that every band has, and
yeah.
And the problem usually is that as a band or as an artist, you only have one period where the success is very, very big. It's very hard to repeat it. So if you want to make money, and it happens in that period, and afterwards it was a bad period financially, then it's very hard, to come back from that. But
You learn from it.
It's all very, like 30 years in the past, 40 years, I don't care.
And then another two great albums, Starlight Dancer and Phantom the Night, for me are unbelievable album. But at the same time, you guys were going to many changes in the band.
Yeah.
So how you manage to new people coming in, and you have a success from before, and then you became starting at the time where a lot of commercial success. How you manage the changes within the band to commercial success, if you will?
Well, it was not planned. You can't plan a commercial success. We had a huge lineup change in '78 because our singer Max Werner, he decided he didn't want to sing anymore. He didn't like to do stand in front of the stage and do the lead vocals. He hated his own voice. He said, "I want to drum." So we gave him the chance, and we had a huge lineup change, and all of a sudden, with the right song and the right lineup, suddenly it was a commercial success. But for me, at that moment, it was just the next album, and it wasn't planned. You can't plan a #1 album; it's impossible.
Yeah.
So for us, it was a big change after 5 or 6 years of trying to find our own to do our own music and find a way, to satisfy the record company because they want to have sales. I understand that they pay the money for the studio, so they want to earn some money, and we as well, of course. But you can't plan a success. But suddenly it was we had the right hit single in Holland. And well, the album went to #1, and I don't know if we wouldn't have had that big hit, if the band would have survived. The record company spent a lot of money, and I can imagine that if it wasn't a big success, they would have said bye bye Kayak. We try another time, but. So, and well, we've always had a lot of band changes and changes in lineup, and I don't know why. It's just the way things happen. So, some people leave because they have other plans in life. They want to do the music anymore, or whatever, or you get a fight, or it's all 10 reasons for people to leave, or they say, well, I can't go on. I want to do something else in my life. Well, it's all fair, and we. You can't predict it. So it's if you want to go on with music, you have to find substitutes and people that want to go in the band. And we've always been able to find the right people.
Yeah, at the time, it wasn't that difficult to, whatever, a bass player or a drummer leaving. It wasn't that difficult to.
It was difficult when the lead singer.
Yeah,
that's a band is very much identified by the lead singer. If the lead singer says, "I want to quit," you have a problem. So, but in the end, it turned to be a very positive change. Yeah. So, but we wouldn't have expected that. At the moment, we had a big problem because the record company had our manager had organized a tour in America, and then we had to say, "Yeah, sorry, we don't have a singer." So, and in this business, you have to take the chance when it's there. So that chance went away. So, but luckily, we had our big moment, our big years in Holland. So it was a good replacement for the fact that we couldn't go to America. But so it's always when in life, when one door closes, another door opens.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. The Merlin album in '81. That's a very, very good recording. I really like that album. And after that, soon you guys end up splitting up, right? After the Merlin.
After Merlin, yes, we did one semi live album. It was played live, but it was in the studio, and because we had to fulfill our contract with Phonogram then, yeah. And So, but the band was really, after Merlin, it was, there was no band anymore, not really. So, but we fulfilled our contract, and that was that.
Yeah, I got you. And then after that, feel free to now to elaborate. After that, you end up joining Camel, and you end up, part of the composition participation in the unbelievable album, Stationary Trouble. Feel free to elaborate there. What was the process like at the time, and so forth, with playing with Camel and Mr. Latimer?
Well, to me, it was a very big surprise that he called me, and he called me, and because Camel has always had many lineup changes as well, just like Kayak.
Yeah.
But he knew me because we had the same record company in America, Genesis Records, and the label manager from Genesis Records, he sent me Camel albums, and he sent Kayak albums to Andy.
Oh, I see.
So that's why he knew us. And well, one day he called me. He said, "Are you interested to play keyboards on this album and do a tour?" I said, "Yes,
Of course,
of course." And I had work in Holland. The band had stopped, but I was doing a lot of studio sessions and playing live with other people. So. But it was a very positive surprise that he called me, and I think I liked the Camel stuff very much. I didn't know all the music, I know, but I heard a lot, and I thought I could understand why he asked me, because our styles are there is a similar kind of style between our playing, and. So we went on tour in '84, and I really enjoyed that. And we've been in contact ever since. I didn't always play in a band because I have a problem with flying, and of course that's the reason why I didn't play all tours. And I said, I'm sorry, I want to do Europe, and I want to do in a coach, but I'm not flying to South America or Japan, and. But I appreciated that he always came back to me when he was only playing Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned Latin America. I was born in Chile.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've been there. And I came to the United States to study after high school. So, and yeah. I mean, it's a personal question. I'm not going to ask you about if the flying wasn't an issue. You are very good at what you do, Ton. And if the flying was an issue, your life would have changed, to, I don't know, maybe yes or no, but, it would have created a lot more opportunity in your life, going to, like you said, United States or Latin America or Japan, that you guys, every progressive band at the time were very popular in Japan. So it would have been different, but.
I know, but that's, it's no crying over spoiled milk. It's
Right.
the way, and I've had a very good career. I'm happy with what I could do. But you're right. There would have been other possibilities also with Kayak, and but that's the way it is. And
yeah, that's the way. I like I think you're the author of the song Afterwards, and it's a typical melancholy. Classic song for Camel, right?
Yeah, it was very. I didn't, especially. Well, I can tell you, we were in Andy's house, recording Stationary Traveler.
Yeah.
And most of it had, Andy had already done most of it, and I was just, improvising in his studio on the piano, and I think Andy was downstairs, and then he came up. He said, "What are you playing there?" I said, "Just a little, improvisation half. It's not finished. This is an atmosphere, an idea I have." He said, "I want to use that." Okay,
Wow.
good. Well, so that's how it ended up on the album.
Yeah, unbelievable, man. Sometimes for a moment of, in between tracks or a cup of coffee or whatever.
Yeah,
When
that's
you
how
hear a good idea, then, oh, I want
yeah.
to use that.
Yeah,
You got to be
it
receptive to
wasn't
that.
my intention, to play something and hoping that it would end up on the album. I was sitting in the studio and playing for myself, really. But
Yeah,
yeah, but, we liked it, so that's how it
yeah, right.
ended up.
The album that I really like is also the Comeback Camel 1991 Comeback album, Dust and Dreams. I think the album was started that in '85, but it was abandoned for several years. And I wonder if you can, elaborate on what happened. What at the time when it took so many years to
Yeah,
release that album.
you'll have to ask Andy. It's Camel, it's his band. And I know that Andy had a lot of problems with the immigration and back to England and back and first to America, and
Yeah,
so it wasn't really easy for him to record. But we worked at a distance. I recorded my tracks at home in Holland, and I sent them over to America, and he used it on the album. So he asked me to do certain songs, and that's what I did. But don't ask me why it took 6 years to make the album. That's Andy's thing.
I need to get a hold of Andy. Andy is very stay out of the public side.
I know he's hard to reach for
Hard to reach.
I know.
But I will find him soon. I love his music. I love so many bands. And after you were work in the '80s with Camel, you became another member of another great Dutch band, Air on Fire. Feel free to elaborate on how the process was together, how difficult it was to put a new band, what was the motivation to join that band.
Again, like with Camel, I was asked. I already knew Bert Ruiter, the bass player, and Journey, and the singer, and the other guys as well. But the old band Earth and Fire had stopped. The two composers of the band, the Gerard and Chris Koerts,
Yeah.
you know the names. Well,
Yeah, I know the name. Yeah,
they stopped, but then Bert Ruiter, he said to me, well, we've got a lot of requests from the to play live again, and because the brothers don't want it anymore. Would you like to play with Earth and Fire? I said, yeah, why not? It's good music. So and so we played a couple of years in Holland, and some Belgium gigs, I think, but then we also made an album, and because he needed compositions. He asked me and my wife Irene, she wrote the lyrics for compositions for the album Phoenix, and so we did it. And but Earth and Fire wasn't my band. It was the band of Journey and Bert.
Yeah.
And they were the boss, and they would decide which songs would be on the album. So, but again, I enjoyed working with them, and good musicians, and we did a lot of live gigs, and but that also ended. So yeah, well,
fortunately, yeah. And I noticed that you have a long-standing relation with Andy, from the album, I don't know, Rajaz album, and then you guys, they were very alike in music from my point of view. He participated in a couple of Kayak albums. How do you see the commonality between Kayak music in a way and Camel?